At my daughter's wedding, my own child hid me in the kitchen like an embarrassing mistake, and I heard her whisper, "Better keep her there until the photos are done." I stood beside a rolling rack of silver trays, wearing the pale blue dress I had pressed twice that morning, holding the little wooden gift box I had saved for this day, and for a moment I honestly thought I had misunderstood. Weddings are busy. People make mistakes. Seating charts get changed. Names get misspelled. Mothers forgive those things before anyone even asks. But Claire's voice was not confused. It was calm. Careful. The same voice she used when returning a dress she had worn once or correcting a waiter who brought sparkling water instead of still. "She'll ruin the look," my daughter added softly, just beyond the swinging kitchen door. I looked down at my hands. The skin was thin now, lined and spotted from 68 years of living, working, washing dishes, folding laundry, grading spelling tests, packing lunches, signing permission slips, holding feverish foreheads, and writing checks I could barely afford. Those hands had raised Claire Ellis after her father, Robert, died suddenly on a Tuesday morning in March, when she was only 17 and still believed mothers could fix anything. I had not fixed everything. I had only survived one bill, one shift, one lonely night at a time until she could stand in a white satin dress beneath crystal chandeliers and pretend I had never carried her there. I'm glad to have you here. Follow my story until the end and comment the city you're watching from so I can see how far my story has reached. The wedding was being held at the Belmont Grand Hotel in Columbus, Ohio, the kind of place with marble floors so polished you could see the ceiling lights reflected under your shoes. When I arrived, I had paused outside the ballroom doors, taking in the tall vases of white roses, the gold-lettered welcome sign, the framed engagement photo of Claire and Evan smiling beside Lake Erie as if life had never given either of them a reason to worry. My daughter looked beautiful in every photograph. She had always known how to look beautiful when people were watching. I had spent the entire morning preparing like a woman about to enter a sacred place. I woke before sunrise in my small ranch house, made coffee in Robert's old mug by mistake, and stood there smiling at myself because even after 12 years, grief still had its little habits. I curled my silver hair with the iron Claire bought me 5 Christmases ago, the one she later laughed about because I'd used it like a woman from another century. I fastened Robert's pearls around my neck. They were not expensive pearls, not compared to the diamond necklace Claire wore in her bridal portrait, but Robert had saved 3 months to buy them for our 25th anniversary, and he had clasped them with such pride that I had worn them whenever I needed to remember I had once been cherished. In my purse, wrapped in tissue paper, was a cashier's check for $25,000. It was more money than I should have given, more than any retired elementary school teacher living on a pension should hand over without blinking. But Claire had cried on the phone 2 months earlier, saying wedding costs had gotten out of control, saying Evan's family had helped with the venue and she did not want to feel small beside them. "Just this once, Mom," she had whispered. "I want to feel like Dad is still part of my day." That was the sentence that opened my checkbook. Beside the check was the real gift, a small walnut box Robert had made years ago in his basement workshop. Inside it was a letter he had written to Claire before his heart surgery, a letter I had never given her because she had been so young, and I had wanted to wait for the right moment. Her wedding day felt right. I imagined her opening it after the reception, crying softly, maybe reaching for my hand, maybe remembering that before she became Mrs. Evan Whitmore, she had been my little girl who slept with a stuffed rabbit and asked me to sing "You Are My Sunshine" whenever thunder rolled across the Ohio sky. Instead, when I reached the check-in table, the young woman with the headset searched her tablet and frowned. "Margaret Ellis," she said. "I'm not seeing you under bride's family." I smiled politely. "I'm Claire's mother." Her face changed in that quick, embarrassed way people have when they know something is wrong but do not have permission to fix it. She stepped aside, spoke into her headset, then returned with a careful smile. "Mrs. Ellis, there's been a slight adjustment. We're going to have you wait in a private area until they're ready for you." I thought private area meant a bridal suite, perhaps a quiet room where Claire wanted a moment with me before the ceremony. Instead, a young man in a black vest led me down a service hallway that smelled faintly of lemon cleaner and roasted chicken. He pushed open a swinging door, and there I was, in the hotel kitchen, beside stacks of plates and trays of dinner rolls, while servers moved around me with the polite discomfort of people trying not to stare. "Someone will come get you," he said. I nodded because dignity was the only thing I had left to hold. 10 minutes passed. Then 20. Through the door, I could hear music, laughter, the rise and fall of celebration. My daughter's wedding was happening less than 50 feet away, and I was standing where guests were never meant to look. Then Claire came near the door with her planner, her voice low but clear enough to cut through the kitchen noise. "Better keep her there until the photos are done," she said. "She'll ruin the look." I did not move. I did not cry. I only touched the pearls at my throat and looked at the wooden box in my hand. That was the moment I stopped being a mother waiting to be included and became a woman finally willing to see the truth. I had thought that day I lost my daughter. But standing in that kitchen, under fluorescent lights, with my gift unopened and my name erased from the room, I realized I had only lost the last illusion I had about her. For a while, I stayed exactly where I was, standing beside the stainless steel counter while the kitchen moved around me like a world that had no idea mine had just shifted. A young server with freckles asked if I wanted a chair, and I thanked her because my mother had raised me to be polite even when my heart was sitting somewhere near my shoes. She pulled a folding chair from the corner, wiped it with a towel, and placed it beside a stack of linen napkins. I sat down slowly, careful not to wrinkle the dress I had chosen with so much hope. That dress seemed foolish now. Not ugly, not inappropriate, just honest in a room built for appearances. The fabric was soft blue crepe, bought at a department store in Dayton 11 years earlier, hemmed by my own hand because I had always been practical with money. Claire had once told me that practical women were usually the ones nobody noticed. At the time, I laughed because I thought daughters said careless things. Sitting in that kitchen, I understood she had been telling me how she saw me for years. Through the swinging door, I heard the photographer calling names. Bride with bridesmaids. Bride with groom's parents. Bride with college friends. Each group was summoned like they belonged to a polished version of Claire's life. I waited for someone to say mother of the bride. No one did. Instead, I heard Evan's mother, Patricia Whitmore, laughing in that bright, expensive way of hers, the kind of laugh that sounded practiced at charity luncheons and country club dinners. "Claire, darling, this is perfect," she said. "Your color palette is so refined." I looked down at my shoes, navy pumps with a small heel, comfortable enough for a woman who could no longer pretend her knees were 30. I had polished them the night before with a damp cloth. Robert used to say you could tell a person's character by whether they cared for what they already owned. Claire had learned something different. She had learned that new things photographed better. The kitchen clock above the prep station read 5:28. The ceremony had started at 5. My daughter was becoming a wife while I sat between a warming tray and a rack of dinner plates, listening to strangers scrape pans. I wanted to tell myself there had to be another explanation. Maybe Claire was overwhelmed. Maybe Evan's family had taken over the arrangements. Maybe the planner misunderstood. A mother can build a whole shelter out of maybes when the truth is too cold to stand in. But then I remembered the phone call 3 weeks earlier, when Claire asked what I planned to wear. I had described the blue dress, and there had been a pause on the line, so small I almost missed it. "You do not have anything more formal?" she asked. I told her it was the nicest thing I owned. She said, "Right, of course," in a voice that made of course sound like a locked door. I remembered the bridal shower too, held in Patricia's sunroom with glass walls and flowers flown in from California. Claire had introduced me to one of Evan's aunts as my mom, Margaret. She used to teach 2nd grade. Used to. As if my life's work was a small old item tucked into a drawer. When the aunt asked where I lived, Claire answered for me. She is still in the old house outside Dayton, she said, smiling. Very sentimental. The women nodded with soft pity, and I had stood there holding a paper plate of fruit, wondering how a home paid for with 30 years of sacrifice had become something to apologize for. The first time Claire pulled away from me was not that wedding day. It was slower than that. It was missed Sunday dinners that turned into holiday texts. It was my calls going to voicemail while her social media showed brunches with Patricia. It was her saying, "Mom, you would feel out of place," whenever there was a work event, a dinner, a party, a celebration. Out of place became the shape of my motherhood. I was welcome when checks were needed, when childhood photos had to be found, when Robert's old contacts could help with something, when she wanted the appearance of family without the inconvenience of having one. A line of servers passed me carrying salads, and one older man with kind eyes slowed down. "Ma'am, are you sure you are supposed to be back here?" he asked. I almost smiled. "I am beginning to think so." He looked toward the door, then back at me, and his expression softened in a way that nearly undid me. Sympathy from strangers can hurt more than cruelty from family because it proves the thing is visible. I reached into my purse and touched the edge of the cashier's check. $25,000. I had driven to the bank 2 days before and sat across from a teller young enough to be my granddaughter. She asked if I was sure, and I said yes because I wanted Claire to begin her marriage without worry. Now the envelope felt hot against my fingers. I pulled it out just enough to see my own careful handwriting on the front, "For Claire and Evan, with all my love." I slid it back into my purse. Love, I was learning, did not always need to be delivered on schedule. Then I took out the walnut box. The wood was smooth under my thumb, still carrying the faint unevenness of Robert's hands. He had made it during the winter before his surgery, when the basement smelled of sawdust and coffee, and he pretended not to be scared. I opened the lid only a crack and saw the folded letter inside, his handwriting visible on the top line. "My dearest Claire." My throat tightened. Not because of what Claire had done, but because of what Robert had believed she would become. He had trusted our daughter to remember kindness. He had trusted time to make her softer. I closed the box. From the ballroom came applause, loud and full, the kind meant for a kiss or a promise. I sat very still until it faded. Then, beyond the kitchen door, I heard Claire's voice again, closer this time, laughing lightly. "Just make sure she stays comfortable until after dinner," she said. "I cannot deal with a scene today." A scene. That was what she called the possibility of her mother being seen. I looked at the swinging door, at the narrow strip of golden ballroom light beneath it. For the first time that evening, I stopped waiting for someone to come get me. I folded my hands over my purse, sat straighter in that metal chair, and began to listen. The first real sign that I had not simply been forgotten came from the seating chart. It was not in the kitchen, of course. It stood just outside the ballroom, framed in gold, surrounded by baby's breath and white roses, the kind of display meant to make every guest feel expected. I had seen it when I arrived, but only from a distance, while the young woman with the headset hurried me past it with a smile too bright to trust. Now, from the corner of the kitchen, I could see a narrow slice of hallway whenever the swinging door opened. People stopped there, found their names, laughed, pointed, adjusted their jackets, and walked into the ballroom as if belonging was simple. I waited until the servers were busy lining up dinner plates, then stood and smoothed my dress. My knees felt stiff, but not weak. There is a difference. Weakness bends because it has no choice. Stiffness only means something inside you has locked into place. I stepped through the service door and moved quietly into the hallway. No one stopped me. No one noticed me. That was the strange gift of being underestimated. I walked to the seating chart and searched for my name. Whitmore family. Bridal party. College friends. Colleagues. Neighbors. Out-of-town guests. I read every line twice. Margaret Ellis was nowhere. Claire's mother did not exist on that board. Robert's widow did not exist. The woman who had mailed the deposit for the florist, paid for the welcome bags, altered Claire's rehearsal dinner dress at midnight because the seamstress had missed a stitch, and sent $25,000 toward a wedding that apparently had no chair for her, did not exist. I touched the edge of the frame lightly, as if my name might appear if I only looked with enough patience. It did not. Just then, two bridesmaids came out of the ballroom, both young, pretty, and glowing with the confidence of women who had never been made to feel inconvenient. One of them glanced at me and gave me a polite smile. "Excuse me," she said. "Are you with the hotel?" I looked at her for a moment. She was not being cruel. That almost made it worse. "No, dear," I said. "I am with the bride." Her smile faltered. "Oh. I am sorry. I just thought because you came from back there." She pointed toward the service hall, then blushed and hurried away with her friend. I stood beside that golden chart and felt the hallway tilt around me. Not dramatically. Not like in movies. Just enough that I reached for the wall and pretended I was admiring a framed photograph of the hotel garden. A mother imagines many things on her daughter's wedding day. She imagines fixing a veil, holding a hand, hearing someone say, "You must be so proud." She does not imagine being mistaken for staff because her own child placed her where staff belonged. I returned to the kitchen before anyone from Claire's circle could see me. My chair was still there, waiting under the fluorescent lights. The freckled server had placed a glass of ice water beside it with a lemon wedge floating on top. That small kindness nearly broke through the calm I was trying so hard to keep. I lifted the glass and took one careful sip. The water tasted metallic, or maybe that was just the taste of humiliation when you swallow it quietly. A few minutes later, I heard Patricia Whitmore's voice near the doorway. "Where is Claire's mother, anyway?" she asked. My breath stopped. Claire answered quickly, too quickly. "She is resting in a private room." She was overwhelmed. Overwhelmed. That word did a neat little job. It made me fragile. It made Claire considerate. It turned exclusion into concern. Patricia made a sympathetic sound. Poor thing. It must be difficult, seeing all this without her husband. Claire sighed, and I could picture her expression perfectly, the soft forehead, the lowered eyes, the performance of a daughter burdened by a delicate mother. "I just want today to stay peaceful," she said. "Mom can get emotional, and I really need everything to go smoothly." I set the water glass down without a sound. Emotional. I had not raised my voice when Robert's hospital bills arrived after the insurance company denied the first claim. I had not fallen apart when I found his work boots by the back door 3 weeks after the funeral and realized there would never again be mud on the floor for me to complain about. I had sat through parent meetings, mortgage calls, fever nights, broken appliances, and one long season of grief that made mornings feel like punishment. But to Claire, I was emotional because my presence did not match her centerpiece arrangements. The kitchen staff moved around me, careful and efficient. The smell of roasted chicken and buttered rolls thickened in the air. I watched the servers carry plates toward the ballroom, each one covered with a silver lid, elegant and identical. Outside, people were being fed. Inside, I was being hidden. Then Evan stepped into the service hallway. I recognized his voice before I saw his face. Smooth, practiced, warm enough to pass for kindness if you did not listen too closely. "Claire, sweetheart, we need to handle the gift paperwork before your mother leaves." Claire lowered her voice. "Not now." "Yes, now," he said, still calm. "My father asked about it. If she changes her mind after tonight, that creates problems." My hand tightened around my purse strap. Gift paperwork. Not gratitude. Not family. Paperwork. Claire whispered something I could not hear. Evan answered, "She already brought the check, did she not?" Silence. Then Claire said, "It is in her purse." I saw the envelope. I looked down slowly at the black clasped purse on my lap. For the first time that evening, I understood that the kitchen was not only meant to hide me from photographs. It was meant to keep me quiet, contained, and available until they were ready to collect what they thought I had brought. I opened my purse just enough to see the envelope and the walnut box resting side by side. One held money. One held love. Neither of them belonged in my daughter's hands anymore. The words stayed with me long after Evan and Claire moved away from the service hallway. Gift paperwork. My father asked about it. If she changes her mind after tonight, that creates problems. There are sentences that do not sound cruel until you realize you are the problem inside them. I sat in that metal chair with my purse on my lap, feeling the weight of the envelope, the walnut box, and something else I had nearly forgotten in the side pocket. It was a folded packet from Robert's attorney, delivered to my mailbox 4 days before the wedding. I had almost left it at home. The envelope had been plain, cream-colored, with the return address of Harlan and Pierce, the small law office in downtown Dayton that had handled Robert's estate after he passed. I remembered standing at my kitchen counter when I first opened it, the morning light falling across the linoleum, my coffee turning cold beside the sink. The letter inside was from Mr. Harlan, who had known Robert since they were both young men with too much hair and not enough money. It said there were several documents I should review before Claire's wedding, especially if any financial gifts were involved. I had read only the first page, then folded it away because the language felt too formal, too heavy for a week when I was trying to think about flowers and vows and whether my shoes would hurt after 2 hours. Now, sitting behind the ballroom where my daughter had erased me, I reached into that side pocket and pulled the packet out. My fingers moved slowly. Not from confusion. From the carefulness that comes when you know a door is about to open and you may not like what waits behind it. The first pages were familiar estate summaries, old trust references, the kind of paperwork Robert had insisted on organizing before his surgery. He had always been practical about unpleasant things. Love is not just roses, Maggie, he once told me while labeling folders at our dining room table. Sometimes love is making sure the person you leave behind does not have to beg anyone for what is already hers. I used to tease him for sounding like a courthouse clerk when he was trying to be romantic. I was not teasing him now. Halfway through the packet, I found a document I had never truly studied. It was titled Addendum to the Ellis Family Trust. Beneath it, Robert's signature slanted across the page, familiar and steady. My eyes moved line by line, past the legal phrases, past the dates, past the names. Then I saw Claire's name. Claire and Ellis Whitmore. A trust share reserved for her upon marriage, provided certain family conduct conditions were met. I read the sentence twice. Then a third time. The words did not tremble. I did. Robert had left Claire a separate inheritance, larger than anything I had imagined, but he had attached conditions. Not dramatic ones. Not cruel ones. Simple ones. She was to maintain a respectful relationship with her surviving parent. She was not to pressure, deceive, or coerce me into transferring personal savings, property, or retirement funds. She was not to deliberately exclude me from major family events while claiming access to funds intended as a continuation of family support. If any such conduct occurred, distribution would be suspended and transferred under my control until reviewed by the trustee. I lowered the paper to my lap and closed my eyes. For a moment, the kitchen noise disappeared. I heard Robert instead, coughing softly in the basement workshop, pretending he was only tired. I saw him sanding the walnut box, his reading glasses low on his nose, his hands moving patiently over the wood. He had looked up at me and smiled that tired smile I still carried like a folded note in my chest. I do not think Claire would ever turn cold, he had said one evening when we were talking about the future. But people change when money and pride get involved. Promise me you will not sign anything just because she cries. I had scolded him then. She is our daughter. He had nodded. That is exactly why I am worried. You would forgive her before she finished hurting you. I opened my eyes. The paper in my hand felt less like a document and more like a hand on my shoulder. Robert had seen a possibility I had refused to see. Not because he loved Claire less. Because he loved me enough to prepare for the day my love might make me foolish. I looked toward the ballroom door. Laughter spilled through it, warm and polished, followed by applause and the faint clinking of glasses. Somewhere in that beautiful room, my daughter was smiling beside a man who had just referred to my savings as paperwork. Somewhere under those chandeliers, people believed I was resting because I was delicate. I folded the trust addendum carefully along its original creases and placed it back in my purse, but not in the side pocket. This time, I kept it directly beneath my hand. The cashier's check was still there, inside its envelope, but it no longer felt like a gift waiting to be given. It felt like evidence of the woman I had been when I walked into that hotel. Hopeful. Tired. Willing. Blind in the way only a mother can be blind. I took the check out and looked at the front again. For Claire and Evan, with all my love. The words seemed almost innocent. I slid the envelope behind the trust papers, then closed my purse with a quiet click. A young kitchen worker passed by carrying a tray of rolls and gave me a quick, uncertain smile. I smiled back. My face felt calm now, not because the pain had faded, but because it had found a shape. Pain without a shape makes you beg for answers. Pain with a shape becomes a plan. I did not know yet exactly what I would do, but I knew what I would not do. I would not hand over that check in a corner like a grateful servant. I would not sign anything placed in front of me by a daughter who could hide me from her guests but still reach for my money. I would not let Claire turn my silence into consent. Through the door, I heard the master of ceremonies announce dinner, his voice cheerful and smooth. Guests applauded again. Chairs shifted. Music softened. The wedding moved forward without me, but for the first time that evening, I was not waiting to be invited back into it. I was waiting to decide when I would enter. The first person from my real life who found me was Dorothy Lane. She did not arrive quietly. Dorothy had been my friend for 36 years, which meant she had earned the right to walk into any room where I was being mistreated and look around as if she owned the floorboards. I heard her voice before I saw her. Has anyone seen Margaret Ellis? She asked from the service hallway, sharp enough to make two servers turn their heads. Mother of the bride. Pale blue dress. Pearls. About 5 feet 4 inches tall, and far too polite to complain when she should. I looked up from my chair just as she pushed through the swinging kitchen door. Dorothy had chosen a deep purple pantsuit for the wedding, her white hair swept back, her lipstick bright enough to start an argument by itself. When she saw me sitting beside the napkin cart with my purse on my lap, her face changed. Not dramatically. Dorothy was not dramatic when she was truly angry. Her mouth simply tightened, and her eyes went still. Margaret, she said. Why are you in the kitchen? I folded the trust papers inside my purse and kept my hand resting over them. Apparently, I needed a private place to rest. Dorothy looked at the stainless steel counters, the trays of plated salads, the staff moving carefully around us, and then back at me. This is not a private place. This is where they put people they do not want seen. There it was. Plain. Clean. No decoration. Dorothy had always had a talent for saying the thing everyone else tiptoed around. I tried to smile, but it came out small. She crossed the room and took the folding chair beside mine without asking anyone. I have been looking for you for 40 minutes, she said. They seated me at table 12 with one of Robert's old cousins and a couple from Evan's side who thought I was someone's aunt from Toledo. I asked where you were, and Patricia Whitmore told me you were overwhelmed. Claire told someone else you had a headache. The planner told me you requested privacy. That is 3 different lies before the salad course. I looked down at the pearls in my lap of vision, round and dull under the kitchen lights. Maybe Claire thought it would be easier. Dorothy gave a dry little laugh. For whom? I did not answer. Outside the kitchen, the ballroom music shifted into something soft and expensive. The kind of piano arrangement people choose when they want emotion without mess. Dorothy leaned closer. I saw the family photos, Maggie. No one had called me Maggie since Robert died except her. The name hit a tender place. They took them without you, she said. Bride with groom's parents. Bride with bridesmaids. Bride with college friends. Bride with Evan's grandparents. Not one with her mother. I breathed in slowly. The air smelled like butter, lemon, and steam. I heard her, I said. Dorothy's hand found mine. What did she say? I looked toward the door. That I would ruin the look. Dorothy closed her eyes for 1 second. When she opened them, the anger there had turned quiet and useful. Then we leave, she said. Right now. I will get your coat. We will walk through that ballroom together, and if anyone asks, I will be delighted to explain. For a moment, I imagined it. Dorothy marching me through the room, guests turning, Claire's face tightening, whispers rolling across white tablecloths like spilled wine. It would have felt good for perhaps 10 seconds. Then it would have become exactly what Claire expected from me. A scene. Proof that I was emotional. A story she could retell for years with herself as the exhausted daughter and me as the difficult old mother who could not handle one elegant evening. I squeezed Dorothy's hand. Not yet. She stared at me. Margaret. Not yet, I repeated, and this time my voice sounded more like my own. Dorothy studied my face, then slowly sat back. She had known me too long to argue when I used that tone. What do you know? She asked. I opened my purse just enough to show her the top page of Robert's trust addendum. Her eyes moved across the lines. Once. Twice. Then her eyebrows lifted. Well, she said softly, Robert Ellis, you magnificent, stubborn man. A warmth moved through my chest so suddenly I almost laughed. Not happiness. Something steadier. Recognition. Dorothy tapped the page with one manicured finger. Does Claire know about this? I do not think she read the conditions. I am not sure she knows there are conditions. And Evan? He knows there is money. That seems to be the part he respects. Dorothy's mouth twisted. Men like Evan respect money because it never asks them to be decent. I nearly told her not to be unkind, then stopped myself. There are times when defending people becomes another way of betraying yourself. Dorothy leaned closer again. I heard something else, she said. At the bar, before dinner. Evan's father was talking to a man in a gray suit. He said once the wedding gifts cleared and your contribution was signed over, they could move forward with the house down payment in Upper Arlington. Then Claire said, and I remember this exactly, Mom promised. She will not back out if I make her feel needed. The kitchen seemed to narrow around me. Make her feel needed. Not loved. Not honored. Needed. A clean little hook placed exactly where my heart had always been softest. I thought of the phone call, Claire crying about wanting Robert to be part of her day. I thought of myself driving to the bank, hands tight on the steering wheel, rehearsing how I would tell her that her father would have been proud. I thought of the teller asking if I was sure. She used him, I whispered. Dorothy did not pretend not to understand. Yes, she said. She did. That hurt more than the kitchen. More than the photos. More than the seating chart. Claire had not only hidden me. She had reached into my grief, found Robert's name, and used it like a key. For several seconds, I could not speak. I placed my hand over the walnut box in my purse, feeling the smooth edges beneath the fabric lining. Robert's letter was still inside, still addressed to the daughter he had loved. I wondered what he would have written if he had seen her now. Then the ballroom erupted in applause again, and the master of ceremonies announced that speeches would begin soon. Dorothy looked at me. "What are you going to do?" I stood slowly. My knees protested, but they held. I adjusted the pearls at my throat and smoothed the front of my blue dress. In the reflection of a steel cabinet, I saw an older woman with tired eyes, silver hair, and a calmness that did not look like defeat anymore. "First," I said, picking up my purse, "I am going to let my daughter finish pretending I am not here." Dorothy rose beside me. "And then?" I looked toward the strip of golden light beneath the kitchen door. "Then I am going to remind her who paid for the lights." Dorothy and I did not walk into the ballroom immediately. That would have been too easy, and too easy was usually another name for unprepared. Instead, we stood just inside the service hallway, close enough to hear the celebration but far enough to remain invisible. The door opened and closed as servers passed with plates of chicken, glazed carrots, and tiny towers of mashed potatoes shaped for people who valued presentation over hunger. Each time the door swung open, I caught pieces of the room, candlelight trembling inside glass holders, white roses spilling from tall centerpieces, the shimmer of Claire's dress as she moved between tables, Evan's hand resting lightly at her lower back, guiding her like a man presenting something he had purchased. She looked radiant. That was the word people would use. Radiant bride. Beautiful wedding. Perfect evening. No one would write hidden mother in the guest book. No one would photograph the folding chair by the napkin cart. Dorothy stood beside me with her arms crossed, watching my face more than the room. "You are very quiet," she said. "I am listening." "To what?" "To how they explain me." She did not answer, because just then Patricia's voice drifted through the opening door again. "Claire, your mother is not coming in for dinner at all?" Claire laughed softly, the way she did when she wanted to make something unpleasant seem harmless. "She is more comfortable where she is. Honestly, this kind of event is a lot for her." Patricia made another sympathetic sound, and I could almost see her touching Claire's arm. "You are a good daughter to manage it so gracefully." "Manage it." "Manage me." I closed my eyes for a second. Dorothy touched my elbow, not to comfort me, but to anchor me. I opened my eyes and kept watching. The master of ceremonies began calling for attention. His voice rolled through the ballroom, warm and polished, thanking everyone for sharing this special day with Claire and Evan. I heard applause. Then Evan's father gave a toast about legacy, discipline, and building a future. He mentioned family values 3 times. Men like that loved family values when the family came with a financial plan. Then Patricia spoke, her voice trembling just enough to sound elegant. She welcomed Claire into the Whitmore family and said they had always wanted a daughter. The guests applauded. I wondered if anyone noticed that the woman who had actually raised Claire had not been welcomed anywhere. I thought of Claire at 7 years old, standing on a kitchen chair in our old house outside Dayton, stirring pancake batter while Robert pretended she was the head chef of a famous restaurant. I thought of her at 14, slamming her bedroom door because I would not buy the $200 sneakers everyone else had. I thought of her at 17, sitting between Robert and me in a hospital waiting room, her mascara smudged, her hand clamped around mine so tightly my fingers ached. I had promised her then that we would get through whatever came next. I had kept that promise. Claire had learned to survive. Somewhere along the way, she had also learned to be ashamed of the person who helped her do it. A server slipped through the door with an empty tray, and Dorothy stopped him gently. "Young man, do you know when the family speeches are scheduled?" He glanced toward the ballroom. "After the bride and groom finish visiting tables, ma'am." "Maybe 10 minutes." Dorothy thanked him. I looked at my purse. 10 minutes. It was strange how a life could narrow itself down to a few sheets of paper and a decision. "Maggie," Dorothy said quietly, "you do not have to do this in front of everyone." I know. You could call Mr. Harlan tomorrow. Handle it privately. I know. Then why stay? I watched Claire bend beside an elderly Whitmore relative, laughing sweetly for the photographer. Her face knew exactly where the camera was. Because she hid me in private, I said. And she planned to take from me in private. If I leave quietly, she gets to keep the story. Dorothy said nothing for a moment. Then she nodded. Then we make sure she does not. Before I could answer, Evan appeared at the service door. He did not see Dorothy at first. His eyes went straight to me, then to my purse. His smile was smooth, but there was a tightness around his mouth that had not been there earlier. Margaret, he said, as if he had been searching out of concern. There you are. Claire has been worried. Dorothy made a small sound beside me. Evan noticed her then, and his smile became even more practiced. Mrs. Lane. Good to see you. Is it? Dorothy asked. I put one hand lightly on her sleeve. Evan cleared his throat. Margaret, Claire wanted me to check on you. We are so sorry about the seating confusion. These events can be chaotic. I looked at him. He was handsome in a polished, careful way, every hair in place, cuff links shining, shoes expensive enough to make no sound on hotel carpet. Was there confusion? I asked. His smile held. A small mix-up. Nothing worth upsetting Claire over today. There it was again. Claire's peace placed above my dignity. He stepped closer and lowered his voice. Actually, while I have you, there are a few simple documents we hope to take care of before the evening gets away from us. Just housekeeping related to your wedding gift. Dorothy's posture changed, but she stayed quiet. I tilted my head. Housekeeping? Yes. The financial transfer. It is easier if we formalize everything now, while all parties are present. All parties. I almost admired how cleanly he could turn greed into vocabulary. And where would you like me to sign? I asked. Relief flickered across his face. We can use the small office near the coat check. Claire can join us for a minute. It will only take a moment. A moment. That was all he thought my life savings deserved. I reached into my purse and felt the cashier's check, then the trust addendum beneath it. The paper edges were firm under my fingertips. No, I said softly. Evan blinked. I am sorry? No. I will not sign anything in a coat check office. His smile weakened. Margaret, I understand this has been an emotional day. I looked past him toward the ballroom, where Claire stood in the glow of the chandeliers, laughing with guests who believed she was gracious. Then I looked back at Evan. You keep using that word as if it means foolish. His face cooled by one careful degree. That is not what I meant. Good, I said. Because I have never been more clear-headed in my life. Dorothy's hand brushed mine, a silent approval. Evan adjusted his cuffs, buying himself a second. Perhaps we should include Claire. Yes, I said. We should. His expression relaxed slightly, as if he had one. He did not understand. Not yet. I stepped fully out of the service hallway for the first time all evening, my purse tucked under my arm, Robert's pearls resting against my throat, Dorothy beside me like a witness. The ballroom light touched my dress, and for a second the noise seemed to lower, not because anyone had noticed me, but because I had finally stopped hiding where I had been placed. Evan gestured toward the side corridor. I did not move that way. I turned toward the ballroom doors instead. Mrs. Ellis, he said, his voice tightening. I kept walking. The speeches are about to begin, I said. That seems like the proper time for family business. The ballroom did not fall silent when I entered. That only happens in stories where pain is kind enough to announce itself. In real life, people keep eating, laughing, lifting glasses, and leaning toward one another while someone else's heart changes shape just a few feet away. I stepped through the wide doorway with Dorothy at my side and Evan behind me, his polished shoes finally making sound because he was walking too quickly. The room was warmer than the kitchen, filled with candlelight, perfume, flowers, and the soft clink of silverware against china. It was beautiful. That was what made it cruel. Every detail had been chosen with care. White roses. Gold-rimmed plates. Cream linen. Tiny cards with each guest's name written in calligraphy. I passed table after table, searching without meaning to, still hoping some forgotten corner might hold my name. It did not. A woman near the door glanced at me, then looked away with the uncomfortable expression of someone trying to place a face from a family slideshow. She could not place me because I had not been in the slideshow. I saw the screen near the dance floor, still glowing with photographs from Claire's childhood and college years. There was Claire in a cap and gown. Claire at Lake Erie. Claire with Robert on her 8th birthday, frosting on her nose. Claire with Evan's family last Christmas. Not one photograph of me. Not even the old picture of me holding her outside the hospital in a pink blanket, the one Robert had kept in his wallet until the edges softened. My daughter had not just hidden me tonight. She had edited me backward through time. Claire stood near the head table, holding a champagne flute, her veil pinned perfectly beneath a cluster of pearls. She was laughing at something Patricia said when she saw me. The laugh stopped first. Then the color in her face shifted, just enough for a mother to notice. She set the glass down carefully, as if sudden movement might crack the image she had spent months building. Evan reached her and bent to whisper. Her eyes moved from him to me, then to my purse. Not my face. My purse. That told me everything I needed to know before she said a word. Mom, she said, crossing the space between us with a smile pasted on so quickly it looked almost painful. There you are. I was worried. Dorothy made a small noise that might have been a cough if anyone had been generous. Claire kissed the air near my cheek, not close enough to touch my skin. You should have stayed resting. I told them to make sure you were comfortable. They did give me a chair, I said. Her smile tightened. Good. Wonderful. This day has been so hectic. Evan stood beside her now, one hand at her back, the other tucked in his pocket. Margaret was just saying she would prefer not to handle paperwork privately, he said, his voice smooth but edged. Claire's eyes sharpened. Paperwork? The gift transfer, he said. She thought during speeches might be appropriate. For 1 second, Claire forgot to perform. I saw the child she had been when caught in a lie about a broken lamp, eyes wide, mouth parted, already searching for the version of events that made her innocent. Then the bride returned. Mom, she said softly, taking my hand between both of hers. Her fingers were cool and perfectly manicured. This is not the time. I looked at her hands around mine. I had held those hands when they were sticky with popsicle juice, when they trembled before school plays, when they clutched Robert's hospital blanket as if grip alone could keep him in this world. Now they held mine like a lock. When is the time? I asked. After the reception, she whispered. Please. Do not embarrass me. There it was, finally spoken plainly. Not do not be hurt. Not let me explain. Do not embarrass me. I gently removed my hand from hers. I have been trying very hard not to. Her eyes flicked toward the nearby tables. A few guests had begun to notice us. Patricia watched from the head table, her brows drawn together. Evan's father leaned back in his chair, evaluating the scene like a business problem. The master of ceremonies tapped the microphone near the dance floor. Ladies and gentlemen, if I could have your attention for our next toast. Claire seized the moment like a rope. Perfect, she said quickly. We will talk later. She turned, but I spoke before she could step away. I would like to say something. Her shoulders froze. Evan lowered his voice. Margaret, I do not think that was scheduled. Neither was the kitchen, Dorothy said. Claire's head snapped toward her, then back to me. Mom, no. The word was quiet, but beneath it I heard command. I had heard that tone more and more over the past few years. No, Mom, that dress is too casual. No, Mom, you would not enjoy that dinner. No, Mom, let me explain it because you get confused with these things. Each no had been wrapped in concern until it became offense. I had lived behind that fence because I thought staying near her mattered more than standing tall. The master of ceremonies smiled uncertainly as I approached the microphone. He was a young man in a tuxedo who clearly did not know whether to stop an older woman wearing pearls at her daughter's wedding. Good manners worked in my favor for once. He handed me the microphone with a hesitant smile. The room quieted in layers. First the tables near the front. Then the middle. Then the back, where someone lowered a fork onto a plate with a tiny sound that seemed much louder than it was. I looked out at more than 200 guests. Faces turned toward me, curious, polite, some confused. I found Claire near the head table, standing very still. Evan was beside her, his expression no longer warm. Patricia's hand rested against her necklace. Dorothy stood by the edge of the dance floor with her chin lifted, as proud and fierce as any sister could be. I held the microphone with both hands so no one would see whether my fingers trembled. For those of you who do not know me, I said, and my voice sounded calm through the speakers, older but steady, my name is Margaret Ellis. I am Claire's mother. A small rustle moved through the room. There it was. The missing fact placed back where it belonged. I was not on the seating chart tonight, I continued. I was not in the family photographs. I was not introduced with the bride's family. For most of the evening, I was seated in the kitchen with the staff. Someone gasped softly. Claire whispered my name, but I did not look at her. I am not saying this to create a scene. I spent most of my life avoiding scenes. I taught second grade for 31 years, and I raised my daughter after my husband, Robert, passed away. Avoiding scenes was practically a survival skill. A few nervous laughs flickered and died. I reached into my purse and took out the walnut box. The room watched. Robert loved Claire very much. Before he died, he wrote her a letter for a day like this. I brought it tonight because I believed this wedding was not only about money, flowers, photographs, or appearances. I believed it was about family. Claire's face had gone pale now. Not from shame alone. From fear that the wrong truth was standing too close to the microphone. I placed the walnut box on the small table beside me, unopened. Then I took out the folded trust addendum. Evan's expression changed at once. He recognized the shape of danger when it came on legal paper. Robert also left instructions, I said. Instructions I did not fully understand until tonight. Claire took one step forward. Mom, please. I finally looked at her. You asked me not to embarrass you, I said gently. I wish you had asked yourself not to embarrass me first. The silence that followed felt wider than the ballroom. Then I unfolded the document. I unfolded the document slowly, not for drama, but because my hands deserved the dignity of steadiness. The paper made a small sound in the microphone, thin and crisp, and that sound carried through the ballroom more clearly than the music had. People leaned forward. Some looked at Claire. Some looked at Evan. Most looked at me with the uncomfortable curiosity reserved for moments when a celebration begins to reveal its cost. I did not read every legal line. Robert would not have wanted that. He hated when people hid cruelty behind complicated language, even though he respected careful paperwork more than any man I had ever known. I found the paragraph Mr. Harlan had marked with a small yellow tab and held the page close enough to read without my glasses. Any deliberate exclusion, humiliation, or financial pressure directed toward my wife, Margaret Ellis, by a beneficiary of this trust shall suspend that beneficiary's distribution until reviewed by the trustee. If such conduct is found to be intentional, control of the distribution shall transfer to Margaret Ellis for her lifetime. The words landed without ornament. No shouting. No accusation. Just Robert's careful protection entering the room 12 years after his voice had left it. I lowered the page. No one spoke. Even the waitstaff had paused near the walls, silver trays held close to their chests. Claire's mouth opened slightly, but no sound came out. Evan moved first. He stepped toward the microphone with a smile that had lost its warmth. "Margaret," he said, soft enough to sound reasonable to people who did not know better. "This is a misunderstanding, and I am sure no one wants legal matters discussed during a wedding reception." I looked at him. Then no one should have brought legal papers to the kitchen. A murmur moved through the tables, low and spreading. Evan's jaw tightened. Claire turned toward him, panic breaking through her bridal polish. "You said she would not know about that," she whispered, but the microphone caught enough of it that the first 2 rows heard. Patricia closed her eyes. Evan's father stared at the tablecloth. I felt no triumph. That surprised me. I had imagined, in the small dark corner of my mind where wounded people keep their sharpest thoughts, that public truth would taste sweet. It did not. It tasted like cold tea and old grief. But it was necessary, and necessary things are often not sweet. I turned back to the guests. "I came here tonight with a wedding gift," I said. "Not because I am wealthy. I am not. I live in the same house Robert and I bought when interest rates were high and our furniture came secondhand from neighbors. I taught children how to read for more than 3 decades. I clipped coupons. I drove the same Ford until the heater stopped working properly. The gift I brought was money I saved carefully, because my daughter told me she wanted her father to feel present today." Claire covered her mouth with one hand. Her eyes shone now, but I had seen enough of her tears over the years to know they did not always mean regret. Sometimes tears were only tools that appeared when words failed. "I also brought a letter from Robert," I continued, touching the walnut box. "He wrote it for Claire before his surgery. He wanted her to have it on a day when she began a new chapter. I thought that day was today." My voice wavered for the first time, and the room softened with it. Not toward Claire. Toward the truth. But letters are not decorations. They are not props. They belong to the person who is ready to receive what they mean. Claire stepped forward. "Mom, please, I am sorry. I did not mean for you to feel excluded. The planner made mistakes. Everything got out of control." I looked at her white gown, at the pearls woven into her hair, at the soft makeup around her eyes. She was still beautiful. That was another hard truth. People can look beautiful while doing ugly things. "Claire," I said, "the planner did not remove my name from the seating chart. The planner did not take family photographs without me. The planner did not tell people I was overwhelmed while I sat beside the napkins. The planner did not ask me to sign over my savings in a side office." Her face crumpled, but I did not move toward her. For once, I let distance do its work. Evan tried again. "This is excessive. We can speak with the attorney later." "Mr. Harlan will be speaking with you Monday morning," I said. I called his office from the kitchen while dinner was being served. I left a message explaining exactly where I was seated, what I heard, and what documents you requested I sign. That was not entirely planned. It had happened while Dorothy stood guard near the swinging door, her purple sleeve blocking the view of anyone passing by. I had used my old phone, the one Claire said embarrassed her because the screen was cracked near the corner, and I had left a calm, detailed message for the man who had been my husband's friend. Sometimes justice begins with a voicemail from a woman everyone assumed was too confused to understand paperwork. Evan's expression changed completely then. The polish remained, but the confidence went out of it. Claire looked at him as if he had promised her a floor that was no longer beneath her feet. I picked up the cashier's check from my purse and held it where only the front rows could see. "This was my gift," I said. $25,000. I brought it willingly. I brought it with love. I will be taking it home with me. A sound moved through the room, not applause, not shock exactly, but the collective breath of people realizing they had been seated inside someone else's revelation. Patricia stood then, her hand pressed to her chest. "Margaret, I had no idea." I believed her. That did not make her innocent in every way, but I believed she had not known the kitchen part. Shame moved across her face, and for the first time that night, she looked less like a society hostess and more like a mother wondering what kind of family her son had helped build. I folded the check and placed it back in my purse. Then I closed the walnut box and held it against my side. Claire took another step forward, her voice breaking. "Please do not leave like this." I looked at her for a long moment. I saw the baby in the pink blanket. The girl with pancake batter on her cheek. The teenager crying in the hospital. The woman who had hidden me behind a kitchen door. They were all her. That was the part people never understand. Betrayal does not erase love. It only teaches love where it can no longer safely stand. "I am not leaving like this because I want to hurt you," I said. "I am leaving because staying would teach you that hurting me has no cost." The room remained silent. I placed the microphone back on its stand. No final insult. No raised voice. No dramatic exit. Just the quiet sound of an older woman gathering her purse, her husband's letter, and the last of her self-respect. Dorothy met me at the edge of the dance floor and offered her arm. I took it. Behind me, Claire whispered Mom once, small and frightened, but I did not turn around. Not yet. Some names are too powerful to answer when they are only being used to stop you from walking away. Dorothy and I walked out of the ballroom without rushing. That mattered to me. I did not want anyone to remember me as a woman fleeing. I wanted them to remember the straightness of my back, the pale blue dress Claire had been ashamed of, the pearls Robert had saved for, and the silence I carried better than any speech in that room. The music did not start again until we reached the hallway. Behind us, voices rose in careful fragments, the kind people use when they want to discuss a scandal without admitting they are hungry for it. Dorothy kept her arm linked through mine all the way to the coat check. "Are you all right?" she asked. I looked down at the walnut box tucked against my ribs and the purse holding the unsigned check. "No," I said. "But I am standing." She nodded as if that was answer enough. Outside the Belmont Grand Hotel, the Ohio evening had turned cold. The kind of cold that gets under your collar and makes you aware of every breath. I had left my coat in the guest closet near the entrance, the one with the brass number tags and the attendant who smiled too gently when she handed it to me. I wrapped it around my shoulders and stood beneath the hotel awning while cars moved along the wet street, their headlights stretching across the pavement. The city kept going. That is the strange cruelty and comfort of the world. Your heart can break in a ballroom, and 3 feet away someone is checking traffic, ordering rides, laughing into a phone, thinking about dessert. Dorothy offered to drive me home to Dayton, but I shook my head. I needed the 45 miles alone. I needed the hum of my old Ford, the familiar pull of the steering wheel, the small crack near the dashboard Robert never got around to fixing. Before I left, Dorothy held both my hands. "Do not answer tonight," she said. "No calls. No texts. Not until morning." I almost smiled. "You think she will call?" Dorothy looked toward the hotel doors just as Claire appeared inside the glass, still in her wedding dress, her face pale beneath the lobby lights. Evan stood behind her, speaking quickly, but Claire was not listening to him. "She was looking for me." "Yes," Dorothy said. "I think she will remember you exist now." I turned before Claire could reach the doors. Not because I wanted to punish her. Because if she called me mom in that broken voice while wearing that dress, some old part of me might have stepped backward into the kitchen just to make her stop hurting. And I was finally old enough to know that a mother's tenderness can become a doorway people use without knocking. I drove home with the radio off. The cashier's check lay on the passenger seat beside Robert's walnut box. Every red light felt longer than usual. Every familiar road sign looked sharper, as if the world had been washed clean while I was not looking. When I pulled into my driveway, the porch light had come on automatically. Robert installed that sensor the year before he died, after I tripped carrying groceries in the dark. "No wife of mine is going to fight with a keyhole at night," he had said. I sat in the car for a full minute, looking at that small circle of light, and then I cried. Quietly. Not the kind of crying that asks anyone to come. The kind that empties a room inside you so you can decide what belongs there next. By Monday morning, Mr. Harlan had returned my call. His voice was older than I remembered but still firm. He had received my message, reviewed Robert's addendum, and asked me to come to his office. I brought the trust papers, the unsigned documents Evan had tried to make me sign, and the check I had never handed over. Dorothy came with me and sat in the waiting room pretending to read a magazine while watching everyone over the top of her glasses. Mr. Harlan listened without interrupting. When I finished, he removed his glasses, set them on the desk, and said, "Robert hoped this clause would never matter." I looked at the framed law degree behind him, the dustless bookshelves, the box of tissues on the corner of the desk that I refused to touch. "So did I." He nodded. "But it does." Within 2 weeks, the trustee suspended Claire's distribution pending review. Evan called first, leaving a message full of polished concern. Then Claire called 6 times in one afternoon. Her texts came in waves. "I am sorry. You misunderstood. Evan pushed too hard. I was overwhelmed. Please do not do this to me." The last one simply said, "Mom, I need you." I stared at those 4 words for a long time. Then I placed the phone face down on the kitchen table. Need was not the same as love. I had confused them for too many years. A month later, I drove north to Lakeside, Ohio, and rented a small cottage for the weekend. It had white siding, blue shutters, and a porch that faced the water. Robert and I had once talked about retiring near Lake Erie, someplace quiet where mornings smelled like coffee and wind. I sat there at sunrise with his walnut box in my lap. The letter to Claire remained unopened. I did not tear it up. I did not mail it. I placed it in the top drawer of the little writing desk inside the cottage after I signed the purchase papers 3 months later. Some things are not meant to be destroyed. Some things are meant to wait until the person they belong to becomes worthy of receiving them. Claire did not lose everything that day. That is not how life works. She kept her husband, her photographs, her beautiful wedding dress, and whatever story she chose to tell people who asked. But she lost access to the part of me that could be summoned with guilt. She lost the mother who would stand in the kitchen and call it comfort. She lost the signature she thought love guaranteed. As for me, I gained a quiet house near the water, mornings without apology, and the strange, steady peace of no longer trying to fit inside someone else's picture. Sometimes I still missed the daughter I thought I had. I miss her most when the lake is calm and the gulls circle over the pier, when memory softens the truth and tries to make me sentimental. But then I touch Robert's pearls at my throat and remember the cold kitchen, the golden ballroom light under the door, and my own name missing from the chart. There are people who only remember your place in the family when they need your hand on a check. And there are mothers who finally learn that love without respect is just another room where they were never meant to sit.